Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Simon Barclay, and I lead our financial services data analytics practice at EY. I'll be joined this afternoon by Richard Parker, one of the lead partners in our people advisory service. And what we really want to talk to you about is one of the things close to both of our hearts, and that is why the human elements are just as important as the data and technology elements if you are successfully to transform to a digital organisation. So, before we start talking about actually some of those critical human elements, what I wanted to start by setting out is what do we feel the digital kind of leaders are looking to achieve across organisations. And this absolutely will vary organisation by organisation, but what we wanted to start to set out on the slide are some of the key things we're seeing our clients starting to think about to really transform and to become digitally driven. Firstly, they're thinking about actually, can they support customers on a variety of different devices, mobiles, laptops, depending on where they're interacting, or even voice calls. Can they be context aware? Can they offer true omni-channel services? So can you help your customers actually transition from one way of contacting with you to another in a seamless way? Can you be intelligent in personalising those interactions? And that's really critical. People who are wanting to interact with you digitally are really expecting you to be able to personalise that service for them. Can you be event-driven? We're moving from a world definitely in a digital marketplace where you need to react to events, whether that be internal events shown by your data or external events coming in and react to those and kind of interact with your customer in a reactive way through those events. Can you be autonomous? Can you start to drive self-service and automation through data analytics to really enable those services to require less human intervention? And we'll come on to the humans, the important human elements in a bit, but actually if you can automate that, that's going to drive efficiency. Can you be modular and nimble? If you really think about your technology and wanting to be able to adapt, one of the only certainties now is a technology solution is never going to be stable. You need to continue to be able to adapt and evolve that. So can you think about modular and nimble architectures that allow to evolve, scale, and flex quickly within your organisation? And last but by no means least, are you cloud ready? It really underpins everything we do now. Speaking personally from a data analytics perspective, I never kind of interact with a client now who isn't asking me to transform their data on the cloud. I can't remember the last time I did an on-premise data transformation engagement. So it really is thinking about how do you leverage the opportunities operated by the cloud if you really do want to be truly digital. And obviously important, coming from a data and analytics area within EY, all of this digital transformation is underpinned by being able to leverage the data within your organisation more effectively. How do you personalise your service to your customers digitally if you cannot leverage the data and understand those customers in a way that allows you to personalise that service? How do you react responsively and build new technology platforms if you can't build your data solutions on the cloud as well? So we're really focusing with clients, and they're looking to move from actually traditional responsive analytics where you actually look back and understand what has happened to how do you start to use that data to predict what's going to happen? How do you tailor those interactions, and how do you start to then automate them? So what's really driving all the discussions with our clients from a data and transformation perspective is actually how do you bring that technology and data together to really enable you to truly transform and become digital. So I've talked about some of those critical elements around actually transforming your technology and your data elements of your organisation if you are to achieve digital aspirations. What's become really clear over the last 5-10 years that I've been leading data transformations is that you cannot deliver successful technology and data transformations if you just focus on changing the technology. You can build the best data solution in your in your market, but if you haven't thought about actually how you're going to transform your organisation to make use of that solution, you're never going to really realise the true value of that. If we take some examples, you can absolutely build kind of consolidated data platforms that look to move your data onto the cloud, remove some of the data silos within your organisation, start to build governance around that in terms of embedding it in your technology to build trust in that data. But if you haven't focused on the human elements really helping kind of people within all levels of your organisation, from the exec down, understand the importance of that data. Making sure that it's not just the governance that polices, are you capturing good quality data? People are thinking about that up front as they enter their data into the solution. You've also got the execs who are investing in building out the new platform, in helping drive a culture where people are going to leverage data to innovate, drive innovation in that organisation, and a fail-fast culture. When you're starting to innovate with data, not everything's going to work. You're trying to identify new insights. You need to be ready as an organisation to accept that actually you will kind of start to innovate. You have to fail at things, and you have to build a culture that supports that. And that is really driving data literacy across that organisation. So in our experience, to move up this curve to become data-driven, you absolutely do need to transform your data and your technology architectures. You need to look at how you consolidate data into one central area where you can trust that data and you can easily access it. But you need to build the human elements of that, your organisations, to make the most use of that. And that has to happen at every layer within your organisation. And we're seeing a real focus on driving data literacy across our big clients. And that's where I will pause now to hand over to Richard, who will really start to drill into more detail around those critical human elements and some of the research we've done that really underpins the fact that actually embedding human elements within your transformations is critical if you want to make them successful. Richard, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Afternoon. So just really quickly, a bit of intro. So yeah, my name is Richard Parker, and my role is to really focus on leadership and culture across financial services. And I'm going to explain a little bit about why that's important when we're talking about tech and implementing tech programs in a second. But just really quickly, firstly, I'm delighted to be at a Women in Tech conference. It was fascinating, if you read the paper, to see that only 19% of women thought that all men were allies in terms of creating a more inclusive environment for women to be successful. Now, I'm married to a woman in tech, and she has worked in tech for most of her career. Whether she thinks I'm an ally or not is another question. But therefore, I'm delighted to actually be here to try and talk about it. Actually, if I think about what we're going to talk about specifically, is more about engaging people as opposed to engaging one particular group of people. So if I give you a bit of an insight. So our focus is really around how do we create behaviour change around any type of transformation. And the simplest management theory that I can try and explain to you is 3 words. Understand, care, can. If we want people to change their behaviour, we need to help them understand what is the change that we're trying to make, why are we doing it, what's the difference that it makes to me, what is the behaviour change that I have to do, so rationally I get what it is we're trying to achieve. But if you want me to change behaviour, I have to care about it. So can you create an emotional connection, gets me to understand this is going to mean something to me, and this is going to mean something to the people that I work with. And if I then care about it, can I do something about it? Do I have the skills, the capabilities, the time, the resource to actually implement what we're talking about? Now, for those of you who were in the last session talking about neurodiverse people in the workplace, I think this really starts talking about, well, how are we helping people to understand? How are we helping people to care about what it is, the tech transformation that we are doing? I'll give you an example. So we're currently working on a big global tech leadership program with a client. So they want to ensure that all of their leaders are implementing Agile, DevOps, product development in a consistent way. So you could do well, let's talk about Agile and let's talk about DevOps and so forth. Well, yes, that is part of it. Well, what we're doing is ensuring, if you want to do the understand, care, can element, yes, we have to upskill all leaders in this is what we're really talking about Agile, and this is what we want to talk about, and here's the narrative. But what we also want to talk about is how you are going to lead it. How are you going to engage people in the behaviour change that you're trying to create? And so really using the simple theory of understand, care, can, you then start to think about, well, how do we enable people to do it? And you start thinking about the sponsorship that's required at a senior level. Simon talked about it starts from the top. We get exec sponsorship all the way through. And again, if I think about some of the stats in the Women in Tech survey, it talked about the lack of sponsorship opportunities to enable people to be able to, or to women to step into future opportunities. And so when we're really thinking about creating that behaviour change, are we actually getting people to really think, understand, care, can? So we did a piece of research into truly understanding what makes a successful transformation. And to give you a little bit of background, so we did this in conjunction with Oxford Said University. We looked at over 1,000 transformations, half of which were successful, half of which were not successful. We spoke to the C-suite leaders and we spoke to the project teams to get them to really understand what makes a successful transformation. And ultimately, we came up with 3 key findings. Firstly, there were a set of paradoxes that leaders need to be able to hold to enable us to be able to lead a successful transformation. I actually spent this morning with a client going through where do they sit on this paradox? Where do they sit on being able to, what I would call, be both? So if I give you an example, in transformations, we want results today. We want to be able to see where we're going immediately. And yet we know transformation takes time. Behavior change, culture change takes time. So stakeholders, how do we satisfy them with being able to give, yes, results now, but knowing that transformation takes time? We also know one of the other paradoxes is to enable us to have a clarity of vision. So being really clear on why we're doing this and where we're going. And yet we know that in tech transformations, the journey is not going to be clear and simple. And we know that we don't really know what that's going to lead to. We don't really have clarity. We've got to have to work in ambiguity. So that paradox of a leader being able to, yes, be able to talk and communicate with a clearer vision, but also work in a world of ambiguity. So there are paradoxes. We have to be able to be agile as leaders to be able to lead through those. The second key finding was understanding this emotional journey. It's the middle slide there. So anybody that's led some sort of transformation or change leadership will understand the impact of the change curve. We know that there's going to be a dip in emotions as we go through. We're trying to get people to change from one set of behaviors to another. That feels uncomfortable. We know there's going to be difficult times. We know there'll be a dip in emotion. So the important thing is for leaders to think, so what do I do at that point? One of the fascinating stats that came out of this survey is that if you ask leaders, they thought leadership was the #1 factor in leading a successful transformation, but only the 10th most important factor in unsuccessful transformations. Workers thought leadership was #1 in both. Now, what that fact says to me is that in unsuccessful transformations, leaders take a step away and go, that's nothing to do with leadership. It's all other factors that are going on that's causing this. And at that point when the emotions are going down, the interventions required at that point to ensure that actually we are listening, we are taking care, we are understanding, we are trying to get you on the journey. What the graphs on this slide are showing that if we don't get that right, not only does it have a negative impact on the transformation that you are working on, but all subsequent transformations and the next periods of work. And so not only can it have a negative impact on current work, but future work as well. And finally, we found 6 levers. 6 levers that can lead to a successful transformation. And the output of this is if you have these 6 levers in place, you are 2.5 times more likely to lead to a successful transformation. And so these 6 levers are having a clarity of vision, understanding, care, can. Do we get people to connect with the vision, not just, oh, we told you, this is what we're trying to do. Do people get it? Do they understand it? Do they really connect to it? The second lever is about having adaptable leaders, people that can cope in that ambiguity, that are able to set a clear direction, but also to be able to adjust. We also need leaders who can create a sense of psychological safety, creating an environment where people can try new things, can try and fail fast, as Simon talked about, because ultimately, if we're going to transform, we have to adapt, we have to innovate, we have to try new things. Can they do that where you're understanding that the tech is not the transformation? The behavior change is the transformation that we're trying to get. Clearly, the tech is a critical component to enable us to get to that transformation. And if we want people to change their behavior, we have to give them a chance to try it and to test it and to innovate with it. If we're going to do that, we've got to create an environment where they can feel okay testing and trying it in different scenarios. And by the way, they're going to try that with different groups. So can we create collaboration across the business and at different levels? It isn't always the leaders that come up with the solutions. So can we enable and empower people to try the tech, to try and innovate, to create new ideas, to create teams at across different levels, because that's where it gets embedded. And so this is all about putting humans at the center. This is all about truly understanding, if I want people to connect to the tech that we are implementing, what we're actually trying to ask is, can we get them to change their behavior? Can we get them to shift from A to B? And at that point, I'll pause for any questions. And we will wait for the microphone so everyone can hear.
Thank you. Yeah, really interesting. You talked about kind of successful and not successful transformations. I was just interested in, I think, most big transformations in companies, whether they're successful or not, are often deemed as successful. So in your kind of experience, how realistic is it to think that people will think that transformations are not successful?
Yeah. So people ask, what was the criteria of a successful transformation? That was down to the companies to deem whether they thought it was successful. So did it achieve? Because what we've got in those 1,000 transformations, we've got digital transformations, we've got organizational transformations, we've got sort of workforce transformations. And so they would deem whether they achieved their objectives set out. So we didn't set this is the benchmark that you needed to be able to get to. I mean, ultimately, did they change the behavior that they were looking to do? I suppose that's the question. Any other questions?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Archie. I have a question about, do you ever evaluate whether a transformation is successful or not based on the criteria you're setting? And also, are you taking it immediately after? Are you conducting the evaluation immediately after the transformation, or 6 months, 1 year, 10 year? What is that timeline for evaluation? Because you also mentioned transformation takes place over time. Yeah.
So, Simon, if I start on a behavior change, then I'll give you a minute to think about a tech answer. So yeah, I think if we look at behavior change elements to it, you can get immediate responses, which is about, did you enjoy it? Did it get you thinking differently, right? What we really want to evaluate is, did behavior change over time? And so you can measure that in a number of ways. You can measure it in engagement surveys. That's like almost the simplest thing to do. Did you get a shift in behavior? Are people more engaged? Do they connect to the transformation, and whatever it is? But actually, you can measure things in terms of internal promotions or sort of internal work metrics that you are actually looking to do, because I think that gives you a longer term impact on the transformation you're trying to do. I think whenever you start out, it comes back to the clarity of vision. What are you actually trying to change? Are you just trying to implement SAP, or are you trying to get people to be more independent and work in a different way and be more self-serve? So I think setting out metrics, because you'll get immediate shifts, but you actually want to get long-term behaviour change. Simon, don't know if you want to ask from a tech.
Yeah, no, so I would agree with that. Setting up upfront how you're going to measure success is absolutely something we do with our client, and it's that outcomes focused. It's not always exactly how you get there, but what are the outcomes? What's the change we really want to achieve through that you can measure against? And I think when do you measure it is a very good question. If I went back kind of 5, 6 years, where actually all of our transformations almost were following waterfall delivery, because that's how people delivered big tech. It was complex. We want to really understand the requirements, then we're going to design, then we're going to build, actually, and then we have to probably wait 6 months after we've delivered to really realize that value. That, if you're following a traditional model, it does take time after you've delivered a big transformation for the organization, for the people change to come along with it, because you haven't usually focused on that in the old world. Now where we're actually, specifically from a data, but also from our tech transformation perspective, it's much more of an agile delivery. So you focus on incremental value delivery and going on that journey with the business. So you're not doing it in a tech world and delivering a product. You're going on a journey together. You're actually have the humans at the center of what you're trying to transform. And then you actually can deliver incremental value throughout your transformation. So a lot of the work we're doing now with clients, re-looking at their data strategy, is how do they deliver their data transformations to be agile and deliver incremental value throughout the transformation. Because if you look at a modern world, and I touched on this earlier, transformation probably doesn't change. You're going to drive a program. As soon as you finish that 3-year program, there are more things they're going to want to transform. So you need to be thinking about actually agilely delivering that incremental value, and that's what builds the trust of the exec. People can see that value being delivered. And that's why human at the center is more important now than ever, because you need to embed that together. Hope that answers your question.
Kind of. I think there's a bigger discussion to be had around the area of evaluation, especially with behavior change. Sorry, I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, I'm pretty loud. Yeah, I was just saying that for those who couldn't hear me, that there is a bigger discussion to be had around evaluating behavior change, because it's such an intangible concept. And yes, I also understand that when you're implementing behavior change models, immediately everyone is excited. When a new product comes out, it's exciting.
Yep.
But it's 10 minutes, maybe a couple of hours later, you're just going to start finding the disappointment and frustration. I mean, iPhone is a great example. I don't care for the new one now anymore because it's all the same. But when it first comes out, it's like, whoa, it's exciting. So
Yeah.
something that, like, it's a thought that came up. I think there's a bigger discussion to be had. And it also begs to question, if we're following an agile method, is there actually going to be every few weeks you're going to take a test or assessment? Is there going to be an evaluation that's continuous as well? Because I'm just, again, putting thoughts out there. We can talk about it later.
It's a big topic. Again, it comes back to your point, absolutely rightly. What are you going to measure? How do you measure that? Do you give people individual personal goals and metrics to measure on that? But to the agile point, it's around actually up front, you agree the business use cases that you're trying to deliver through that agile transformation with the business owners. They set out, actually, as a business owner, I expect this to deliver this value for me, it's not always a monetary value, it could be an operational efficiency, it could be a risk benefit. But if you set that up in the way that actually this is the use case, I'm the business owner for that use case, these are the value drivers I'm trying to enable, then your technology transformation, your data transformation is enabling that business value. In its assessment after that agile release, have we delivered that value? Is there something else we need to do to build on that? And that's why in an agile world, you have product owners who represent the business. They're assessing that as you go live, and you're demonstrating how we delivered that value. It doesn't answer your longer point around how do you get people to continually change their mindset and thinking, and that sometimes does come down to metrics and measures. But if you set up the agile transformation in the right way, it will help you demonstrate value. Thank you.
Hi. So I'm sort of interested in how you drive behaviour change in terms of like learning and skills. Like, how do you help your organisation to become like a learning organisation, that kind of thing? And I was just wondering, have you had any experience of, organisations which have been really successful in encouraging people to learn and for that to become a priority, and any sort of thoughts on how you drive that kind of behaviour?
Yeah, we do. We work with a couple. Whether I can tell you the names now, I'll just check whether they'll all sign off. But let me give you a couple of examples. So what we try to do is get people to, I mean, the first thing, people inspire them, right? So you want them to realise why this is going to be great, and people, you know, a bit like the answer to the last question. It can last a short period of time. You get inspired by speakers, you get inspired by the C-suite leaders, role modelling, you get inspired by something that looks fantastic. Then what you have to do is motivate them. So really understanding, you creating a culture of learning, which actually links to how do you get rapid feedback about behaviour change. And so if you're going to motivate them to get involved in doing something, they want some sort of reward or motivation. Whether that be feedback, it doesn't have to be reward in financial terms, it's actually reward in terms of, I feel better having done this, people are noticing. So we tap into the motivations of why people learn. Some people learn because they want to be noticed that they're learning. Some people learn because they like acquiring new skills. Some people learn because they want to connect with other people so that they can learn. And so actually, if you tap into those motivations, you can then push things out based on different people's preferences. So you then use a sort of blend of comms and nudges and platform to direct people to something and go, well, that's stimulating. It's a bit like that's how social media works. If you go into social media, it's already sent to you because you know you looked at that video last time, so it sends you another one, and then you keep looking at it. You can use the same sort of process from a learning perspective. But you have to start with the inspirational element to it, and then create some motivation that people go, okay, I'm now interested, and then you have the platform that's going to enable it to happen. And when I talk platform, I'm talking in its broadest sense. Learning has to be face-to-face and digital and virtual.
Great, thank you.
So to sort of follow on from that then, is sort of those AIs providing much more information to the system, and sort of the human-centered AI elements of explainability allows people to learn and move forward in the way that you're doing it. But most of those AI models would take the way humans have always approached things to learn and to forward themselves. Now, as they move more to, well, instead of learning from humans, learn from yourself models that go through, they're not necessarily producing the same explainable models at the end of it all that humans are able to understand. How do you maintain the motivations? Because people are fearful that it's going to change their jobs, their abilities to do it, their understanding, their learning. How do you maintain those sort of models and metrics that you're...
Yeah, again, if I give a behaviour change and then hand over to Simon. So what we do notice on learning programmes more broadly, that if you get huge engagement at the start, right? You get engagement in this is going to change my world, this is going to be fantastic. And then there's some events that I'm going to be involved with other people, and so that's really great, and then I'm learning. And then when you shift to the self-directed learning, you can notice the engagement drop off, because actually people want to be connected with something. It's how you create a blend of something, that blended journey that keeps that stimulation keep coming in, and then pushing stuff out to get people to self-direct in their own way. So you have to be able to create both. Otherwise, if you're just relying on people being responsible for their own content, the motivation wanes off reasonably quickly. Don't know if you've got anything on broader AI.
Not in detail around the specific AI, but I suppose part of what we come to when we're trying to drive this learning through safety, we do need to look at, as Richard said, the individuals and how they learn, but also how do you actually really help them to understand the benefit of actually this transformation for them? Because I fully agree with your point. A lot of the time, when you're transforming, you're doing a data transformation or technology transformation, people's immediate, oh, how is this going to affect my job? Do I still have a job in the new world? So it's actually getting them confidence. 99% of the time when we're transforming, it's actually to offer them tools to enable them to do their job better, actually to focus on the more interesting elements on their jobs. So it's taking them on that journey around, coming back to why are we transforming? What's the benefit of actually doing this transformation for them as a business, and how it's going to make them easier? So you get them excited about that. You then don't try and actually necessarily go to every area of the organisation at once to do the change. You pick out what are your focus areas. Do you build a COE? Do you demonstrate how this really delivers value for areas of the organisation, and then start to get other areas excited. So identify who are going to be people who are most interested in this and really driving that. Prove it with them. Let them go out and champion the change to the rest of the organisation, because that's the best way to keep people excited and motivated. It's not you as a transformation or an IT organisation talking about it. It's the other business teams talking about how it's benefited their area of the business and actually letting that change and that learning inspire them. So that's just another point.
Yeah, it's just maybe trigger two other thoughts, effectively nudges that we might use. So firstly, trying to ensure you get the top-down, bottom-up approach to trying to learn and transform. So identifying, we've got a really simple tool where you identify a group of influencers across a business who you then upskill so that they are sort of continuing the culture. So to go to the question of culture of learning, they become your advocates across the rest of the business, just being able to say, keep the narrative strong across the business. But then it links to the other question, which is about how do you measure behaviour change? You can then, on the same platform, it takes 9 seconds to complete a survey, and you do it on a weekly basis. So have you seen a shift in this behaviour? Yes, no. If no, right, you then start calling it out. So you actually start getting people to be able to provide feedback and go, right, why have we not seen this change? And you actually start people being accountable for change, because that does link back to motivations. People actually want to see the behaviour change of something that's being implemented. So doing something really simple, really rapid with a level of accountability, that's when you really see the behaviour change.
How do you deal with transformation fatigue? I often work with clients where they've gone through a series of transformation programs, you know, from a multitude of consultancies, successful and unsuccessful, and many of them have used very similar kind of methodologies that you've espoused today, with human centre at the heart and all of the change management best practices. And a lot of the end users and the client organisations are just kind of sick of transformation. So I suppose, how do you mitigate against that, and what's your response to that?
Yeah, it came up this morning with a client, exactly that point, that sort of change hangover type scenario of going, and what that often does is creates inertia, because you go, if I don't do anything, something else will change in 2 years' time, be fine, I'll just keep my head down. Critically, it's really understanding what's causing that, what is causing the change fatigue, and really being able to enable the leaders to be accountable for that. So if it's because it was never followed through previously, so we implemented something and therefore nothing changed, therefore they're going to be sceptical that we're going to do something again, it's not going to happen. If it's because, my example earlier, the leaders stepped away when it started to get a little bit hairy, we therefore need to create accountability for them to be able to stick onto the programme and so forth. So I think the only way to be able to truly get through change fatigue is to understand what's causing it and put strategies in place. The challenge, of course, with that is as soon as people don't follow the strategies, what you're doing is exaggerating it even further. So you have to have absolute momentum behind it. We all done? All happy? Many thanks. Really appreciate your attention today. Thank you.